Okay, so you've got the custom dice plugin, but you'd like to make your own custom dice, and you're wondering how to do that. Well, it's not too difficult. Inside the custom dice plugin pack, you will find a UV templates folder. This is the layout for your different dice, your D4, your D6, D8, D10, D12, and D20. So you can use that as your template to make your dice-specific textures. Okay, you will need some additional textures, but we'll go over that too. So that's basically it. The most difficult part is getting your textures laid out according to the templates. After that, the configuration is pretty easy. Okay, so in my previous video, I hope you watched it, we discussed that there is 4 types of dice in the custom dice plugin. Now, the first category was core dice, which we don't need to worry about because those are always available and they don't need a configuration. So we can move on to the second type, which was cosmetic dice. These are dice that work just like regular Talespire dice, but have a custom appearance. So I've grabbed here, this is the layout JSON file for your custom dice. It's a file called customdicepacks.json, and this is where you define all of the custom dice that you have. Okay, so I have an example here. It starts off with the name that you want to give that customization. So this is my lava dice, so I called it lava dice-d6 for dice d6 die. Okay, and then you always have a few properties that are common to all dice. The dice pack is the file where it's going to get the mesh for the die that you're talking about. The custom dice plugin comes in with a file called base dice, and that is what you're going to need for 99% of the dice you're making. Those shapes in there match the Talespire dice, so that basically it looks like that they're custom dice, but inside is actually the regular core dice. So unless you are trying to make something very special like a lumpy dice or something like that, you can just keep that on base dice and not worry about it. Then we have the dice base. This is basically the die that you want to use. So in this case, we're making a D6, so I'm going to put D6 there. If I was making a D4, I'd put D4, and so on and so forth. Then we've got the dice collection. This indicates the name of the collection that this dice is going to belong to. So when you have your pull-out menu on the side, there is basically groups called collections, and within that you have individual dice. So that if you're doing something like your lava dice, you can put all your dice together in a collection and access them easily. So dice collection is just the name of the collection. And then the all-important dice texture, that is the actual texture that you want to apply to the die. That's the one that you're going to create based on those templates that I showed earlier. Okay, now if we are creating a cosmetic die, what we want to do is next, there's this section called sides. And this is basically where we tell the custom plugin what to do or what the value is of each side that can be rolled on the die. So in this case, we're creating a D6. So we're going to have sides 1 through 6. And because we just want them to have the value of that side, the value for each one of them is going to be the same. So when you roll a 1, it's going to have a value of 1. When you roll a 2, it's going to have a value of 2, and so on. Obviously, if you were doing, like, let's say a D8, you would need to go from 1 to 8. If you're doing a D20, from 1 to 20, and so on. Okay, and then lastly, we have this images section, and you're always going to see collection and icon Collection is the image that it's going to use when displaying the collection in the side menu. At the moment, this is repeated in every die that belongs to that collection. I think it uses whatever die comes up first. So if you have collections using different images, which you normally shouldn't, but if you do, it's probably going to pick up the first one or the last one. Then we have icon. That's once you get into that inside the collection, what icon is it going to display for that particular die. And lastly, we have this base. What that is in our particular case, we're just making a cosmetic die. We don't want, every time we roll different sides, we don't want a different picture in the summary because they're all this D6 die. So what we can do is we can define this base property, and that just says that any side that's rolled in the summary, just use this image instead. Okay, so that basically means that no matter what side we roll in the summary, it's going to use the same icon, and then put the in the summary it's going to be the total, or in the rolls it's going to have the number on top of it. So that's how we make a cosmetic die. So now the next die that we had in the list was a numeric die that doesn't have numbers like the regular numbers. It has different numeric values. You could probably already see where we're going with this. The process is exactly the same as we did above, except now in your sides, instead of having your 1 through 6 be 1 through 6, you put those different values. So in this particular case, I made a D3, which is basically uses a D6, and then puts 1, 2, 3 for 3 of the sides, and then 1, 2, 3 again for the next 3 sides. So basically here, if die rolls a 1, it's going to be a 1. If it rolls a 2, it's going to be a 2. If you roll a 3, it's going to be a 3. If you roll a 4, it's going to be a 1. If you roll a 5, it's going to be a 2. If you roll a 6, it's going to be 3. So when you roll this die, the values that it can generate is 1 through 3. So same thing. Again, base dice is the pack that we want to use. There's no need to change that. We're still basing it off a D6. The collection is called a RPS for rock, paper, scissors, because this is my rock, paper, scissors die. There's the texture that it's using. And, oh, sorry, this is actually my D3. It's not a rock, paper, scissors die, but I left it in that collection. And then we got our images again. So again, this is the collection that it would appear in, or this is the image that it would use for the collection. This is the image that it would use for the die within that collection. And then again, we have our base set up here so that no matter which side we roll, it's just going to use this image in the summary. Okay, so that was the numeric dice. And then the last possibility is the dice that don't have numeric sides, that they have a property or properties. I'll go to the one example with properties. So very similar. We have, again, the dice pack, don't need to change it. Again, the dice that we're basing it on, still going with a D6 here. The collection that this belongs to is DD for dragon dice. That's the texture that it's going to use for that D6. And now we have our sides. And you can see in this case, instead of having numbers here, we have properties, keywords. Those keywords can be anything you want as long as they're unique. So you can see that when I roll a 1, it's an attack. When I roll a 2, it's a shield. When I roll a 3, it's magic. And then I've got some examples of multiple properties per die side. So if I roll a 4, I get 2 magics. If I roll a 5, I get an attack and a shield. And if I roll a 6, I get a shield and a magic. Okay, so just some examples here. So now, the difference here is But you can see now we don't have a base base definition here in the images section like we had above. Okay. Instead, what we have is each one of these properties here, we repeat down here and provide a texture texture file name. So what that does now is, instead of, when we have a summary, instead of it using a generic icon, which wouldn't be very helpful, because if we have attack or shield or magic summary and they all use the same icon, I mean, the word is still there, but you want to make it presumably specific to the keyword. So now what it's going to do is it's going to, if we roll, let's say, attack, or if we roll 1, it's going to be an attack, and it's going to look up that down here to find out what image it can be, it should use. So this way, depending on which roll you've made, a different image will be used. And that's really it. It's not rocket science. Like I said, the part that's probably going to take the most time is using those templates to actually create the layout or the texture for your dice. And the fact that, you know, if you're doing a set, here I've just shown you a D6, but if you're doing a set, you're probably going to want to do all of the dice in the set. But beyond that, it's not hard to configure. So yeah, make some custom dice and share them with others, and we'll see. And that's about it.